It's 2020, and if you're shopping for a new system, what you really want is an ultra-portable notebook. Why? Because these machines are incredibly versatile and can be good for work and play. But with so many to choose from, how do you decide? Now this is what this video here is for. But before I begin, let me introduce you to the notebook that I have here. It's the new LG Gram 14 Z90. I'm using this notebook because it has just about everything that you want from an ultra-portable notebook. Let's begin with the display because that's what you're going to be looking at all the time and it directly affects the size of the notebook. If portability is a priority, then look for a notebook with a 14-inch display because this offers a good compromise between legibility and portability. With notebooks like the Gram 14 that you have here, which has very thin bezels, the difference in size is even less of an issue. There are also notebooks with 15 and 17-inch displays. This is a Gram 17. The larger display makes them more comfortable to see, and they can usually also show more because their display have higher resolution. However, the trade-off is that they are usually heavier. Now the good thing about LG's Gram family of notebooks is that they have all sizes from 14 all the way up to 17. And the good thing about them is that they are all really light, but I'll talk more about weight later. Moving on, most notebooks today have displays that use IPS panels, a technology that generally offers good colors and viewing angles. But if you are into photography or graphics design and have specific color requirements, then one thing to pay attention to is the color space that the display supports, because this directly affects how accurate the display is at showing colors. Color space support aside, what you really want to pay attention to is the resolution of the display. Now most notebooks have a display that supports full HD resolution, but there are also some others that provide a 4K option. 4K might sound good, but it comes at a price. Literally, because they cost more. And not only that, because there are more pixels to render, it puts a greater strain on your system. This means shorter battery life. Also, it's quite hard to appreciate 4K on a small display. 4K I think is best saved for a larger external display. So personally, I don't find the 4K trade-offs to be worth it and would rather much have a notebook that has a full HD display and enjoy longer battery life. Let's talk about touchscreens. Now touchscreens are usually an extra cost option, so you need to consider if you really need them. Unless of course you want a convertible notebook, the kind that doubles up as a tablet, in which case then you really need a touchscreen. Otherwise, I would suggest skipping touchscreens and saving some money. Here are some other aspects to consider, like refresh rates. For gaming, this could be important. And some notebooks might also have special viewing modes. Take the Gram 14 for instance. It has a special viewer mode that reduces blue light and makes the display warmer so that it's more comfortable for you to read long websites and documents. Finally, considering that most of us are working at home right now, an important consideration is the webcam. Now, most built-in webcams produce adequate images and get the job done. What's more important, however, is to pay attention to its position. Ideally, you want the webcam above the display because that gives the most flattering angles. Some notebooks have their webcams down here at the hinge, and that's not a good idea unless you want people to be looking up your nose. Check if the webcam supports Windows Hello, which uses facial recognition technology to log you in. Apart from webcam, another thing you want to take note of is the microphone. The Gram 14 that I have here has a dual microphone array, which is better at picking up voices, and that will certainly come in handy when you are doing online meetings. Now let's talk about weight, which is one of the most important considerations for any ultra-portable notebook. Now most 14-inch notebooks weigh around 1 to 1.4 kg. Now that might not sound like much, but every gram counts if you have to carry a notebook around all day. 15 and 17-inch notebooks will obviously weigh a lot more, but there are some notebooks like LG Gram series of notebooks that are exceptionally light. But like I said, this is the exception and not the rule. At any rate, the Gram 14 that I have right here weighs just 999 grams. And that's because, unlike most other notebooks that have an aluminum body, the Gram 14 is made out of magnesium alloy. Now, though magnesium alloy is still fairly uncommon, there are more notebooks today that are made out of this material because it is extremely light and strong. Speaking of strong, this brings me to my next point, durability. Despite the Gram 14's slim dimensions, it is actually MIL STD 810G certified. This means it has some resistance to shock, dust, temperature, and pressure. But it doesn't mean that you can just treat them shabbily and throw them around. It just means that they are well suited to the rigors of daily use. One thing you want to consider is how the notebook looks. It's not that I'm superficial, but I prefer something that's clean and understated, just like the LG Gram 14, so that it doesn't draw much attention to itself or to me. You don't want people to be staring at you or your notebook if you are at a meeting or if you are working outside at a cafe. One aspect of the notebook's build that you really want to pay attention to is the keyboard and the trackpad. Because like the display, this is what you're going to be using to interact with the notebook, so you want to make sure that's up to your standards. Keyboards and trackpads are personal things, but what you want to pay attention to is the size, the feel, and the layout. Are the keys big enough to type on, and is there sufficient travel and feel so that you know that you're typing on the key properly? As for the layout, what you want to see is if it's conventional or if there's some odd quirks like a shrunken right shift key, or maybe the keyboard has no function role. Does it have backlight? It might not seem important now, but you'll appreciate having it if you ever tried using your notebook on a red-eye flight or even in bed next to your spouse or partner. Some higher tier notebooks also feature fingerprint scanner for secure logins, but some integrated directly into the keyboard like the LG Gram 14 here. The power button also doubles up as a fingerprint scanner, so whenever you press on it to power up your notebook, you don't have to key in your password to log in. It is super convenient. The larger the trackpad, the better, because there's nothing more annoying than having to swipe multiple times just to get to the bottom of a screen or web page. Also check to see if the touchpad supports Windows Precision drivers, because that usually means a more responsive and fluid touchpad. Let's move on to specifications. Now, most, if not all, ultra-portable notebooks released this year are powered by Intel's newest 10th generation processors. There are also a handful that are powered by AMD's new Ryzen 4000 Mobile Series processors. But what I want to focus on today are Intel's 10th generation offerings. Now, you might have heard that there are two types of 10th generation processors, and you're right. There's Ice Lake and there's Comet Lake. Now, if we want to nitpick the differences between the two, that's going to take a whole other video, so I'm going to keep it simple. Okay, what you need to know is that Ice Lake processors are built on a newer 10nm process, while Comet Lake processors are built on Intel's older 14nm process. What this means is that Ice Lake processors should be more power efficient. They also come with better integrated graphics called Intel Iris Plus graphics. That's a big step up from Intel's earlier efforts. But the reality is, insofar as performance is concerned, you're not going to see a big difference between Ice Lake and Comet Lake processors if all you're going to do is surf the web, view spreadsheets, and type some Word documents. And even though Ice Lake processors should theoretically offer better battery life, it's going to depend very greatly on how you use the notebook. Now, as for choosing between Core i5 and Core i7 processors, unless you're doing something really CPU intensive like video rendering or video editing, there's not going to be a perceivable difference in performance. If all you're going to be doing is answering emails, surfing the web, or watching videos, a Core i5 processor is going to be as fast as a Core i7 one. What you should be paying attention to is how the notebook is packaged, and that means how much memory, storage, and what kind of graphics it has. This is important because most notebooks are not user upgradable. And so if you want your notebook to have good longevity, you have to pick your specifications wisely and not be fixated on the CPU. Luckily, the Gram 14 that I have here is upgradable. It has dual memory and storage slots, so users can add more in future if required. Being upgradable is one thing, but having extra slots is an increasingly rare feature in notebooks these days. For memory, 8GB should be the bare minimum for most users these days. Go for 16 if your budget allows, because that allows you to open and run more apps simultaneously. It is especially handy if you're the kind of user that has a web browser open with multiple tabs on at the same time. As for storage, many notebooks today come with 512GB of storage, and that should be enough for most people. Some notebooks might come with 256GB of storage, and that's also enough if you mainly rely on cloud services for stuff like your videos and photos. But the thing with storage is always more is better, so always get the most that you can afford. As I mentioned earlier, Ice Lake processors have improved graphics performance, and that's good enough for simple games like Dota and Counter-Strike. But if you want to play the latest titles, you're going to need discrete graphics. That doesn't mean you can't play games on this notebook. What you need is something like this, an external graphics dock to boost its graphics performance. And this brings me nicely to my next point, which is connectivity. The most crucial port that I think should be on every notebook is the USB-C Thunderbolt 3 port, like this one here. Now you have to be careful because not all USB-C ports support Thunderbolt 3, so you have to check the specifications carefully. Fortunately, the Gram 14 has a USB-C Thunderbolt 3 port, and this is a very versatile port that can be used for a whole range of things like data, charging, and video output. You'll need one of these if you want to use it with an external graphics dock, like the one that you see here. The slimmest notebooks today only have USB-C ports, so anything extra is a bonus. Now the Gram 14 that I have here, apart from the USB-C Thunderbolt 3 port that it has also has a full-size HDMI port, two full-size USB 3 USB-A ports, one here and the other here, and it also has a 3.5mm audio jack and a micro SD card reader. So the good thing about this notebook is that you probably won't need any adapters with it. As for wireless connectivity, almost all new notebooks released this year supports the new Wi-Fi 6 standard. The LG Gram 14 that I have here supports it as well. But to get the most out of Wi-Fi 6, you not only need a Wi-Fi 6 router, but you also need other Wi-Fi 6 compatible devices. In other words, the way to think about Wi-Fi 6 is this. It's good if you have it, but it isn't the end of the world if the notebook doesn't support it either. We are almost at the end of this buying guide, but since I got you here with me, I want to show you a rather interesting notebook. This is the LG Gram 17. It's a 17-inch notebook, but because it's also made out of the same magnesium alloy material, it's very light. This 17-inch notebook weighs just 1.35 kg, which is about the same as most other 14-inch notebooks. It's incredibly light, but not only that, it has a display with an aspect ratio of 16:10 and a resolution of 2560 by 1600. It lets you see more at a glance. And on top of that, it also has a number pad and a large 80 watt-hour battery. All of this makes it a very good laptop for work. But most of all, the most amazing thing about this notebook is its weight. This is a 17-inch notebook that has none of the usual weight drawbacks and is one that you can really carry around all day. So if you're looking for a big screen notebook, this is one to check out. Okay, that's it for me. If you have any questions about notebooks or how to buy them, please leave it in the comments below. Until next time, see ya!